Welcome, ladies, to Spotlight Hustle. My name is Natalia Nicholson, and I am today with the co-founder of Black Seed, Yvonne, who I am mega excited to have on the show with me today. So I'm going to get straight into it. Remember I said to you, I don't actually research. You'll hear me say this in all my podcast interviews. I don't research anyone. I love what you do, but I didn't over-research you because I generally just want it to be authentic conversation and learn more about what you do. So could you tell us, how you started your business and what you do?
Cool. So we are Black Seed, and we're an early stage VC fund investing in Black-owned businesses. And I would say that my catalyst was frustration. So it was the national lockdown, everybody was forced to sit down, and then we had to witness the online execution of George Floyd. Yeah, it was painful. And whilst I went out to all the protests until my face was blue, it kind of started to dawn on me that what can we do outside of just campaigning and rallying together. And progress looked like financial stability and mobility and investment in our community.
Yeah.
So I was looking at it from a different angle. I was trying to create an angel type syndicate so that people in a similar limbo like me, who grew up working class from Brixton, could band together and buy property essentially in the areas that we call home. And I was speaking to Carl Loco, who is the co-founder of Black Seed, about these ideas, and he was trying to see how he could help me get angel investment. He was working on Black Seed, and at the time it didn't really have a name and it wasn't really racialized. But after a few conversations...
I love that word, racialized, by the way. I'm taking that right.
After a few conversations and research, he kind of got to the bare bones of what it was. Me and him actually had a bit of a gripe with each other. I was trying to work on this property thing, and he was working on a 20-story building that was going to be erected in Brixton with this a landlord from the local area.
Oh, wow.
Who had a bit of a bad reputation with the local community. And for me, it was just the face of gentrification, and I was like, what is this Brixton boy doing? He must be stopped. But when we had a conversation, he spoke about how it would be the home of Black Seed and how there would be subsidised letting for Black founders and £1 million endowment fund for the local community, 2,000 local jobs. And I'm like, if you can't beat them, join them. There's more power being around the table where decisions are being made than angrily protesting against them. So he spoke on the planning application meeting. He said quite poetically, let's view this as Brixton's lifeline, and opposed to being bothered about the skylines, which was what people from the leafier parts of Brixton were arguing against.
Right, okay, yeah.
And that's when the penny dropped for me. I was like, yeah, here's where decisions are being made. How can I get in the room? How can I get a seat at the table? So I just started volunteering my time at Black Seed at that point.
Wow, so you actually volunteered your... Okay.
Yeah.
So how did that transition into volunteering your time into doing what you do now at Black Seed, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So I had a full-time job, had no ambitions of getting into VC, didn't really know what it was, if I was honest.
I know, Yvonne, I don't think many people do. I can admit, I'm going to be completely vulnerable here. I hear the word all the time, VC. In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, this is just for white people, if you really want me to be honest with you. So it's one of those things that maybe I understood it a little bit, but I just didn't think it was for me. So it's not something that I felt to look into more. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, the same. And it's just not typically how Black people have obtained investment.
No, being that to do it ourselves.
Exactly. So bit off a bit of it, was enjoying it, was passionate about it even more so. My heart was with Black Seed, but my head was with the corporate job that I was working, because that's what was, I guess...
So you were a side hustler as well then?
I was a side hustler.
Yeah. I know that story so well. Yeah. I can tell me and Yvonne are about to jump around a bit here because we've got a lot to get through as well. Okay. How did you transition from that side hustle and corporate to saying, right, this is it, I'm going to take the plunge and I'm just going Black Seed full time? Because it's a big decision. We've all got bills to pay. Some of us have got families that rely on us, children. It's not that easy. What did that look like for you?
It's not. One thing I would say is that the chip on my shoulder I had from this sort of weird mix of social class dynamic in my home, being that I was able to obtain a semblance of social mobility through my job, which allowed me to save and then invest. But my home was still very working class. So you go out with your middle class colleagues, you're spending X amount on lunches. At home, it's that could have been a month's worth of shopping. And it kind of starts to rot in you after a while. So that allowed me to develop risk appetite. I had that in bucket loads. What I didn't have was risk capacity.
Love that.
Yeah. So as much as I wanted to do it, practically it didn't make sense. But one thing we often say at Black Seed is that we are a response. It was a game of time and chance.
Yeah.
So the sensible thing would have been to create a financial buffer so that if we weren't able to pay ourselves, I could fall back on that. But that remit of trying to find that comfortability, it just means that we wouldn't have existed.
Yeah, life's just not perfect, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I just had to jump. It was 6 months of working at Black Seed without pay. It got to a point where I'm like, I'm burnt out. I can't do the two. And it was a faith thing. Like, I either do this or I don't. And I decided to do.
I love it.
Yeah.
And did you hear that, ladies? We keep hearing this on this show. I just had to jump and take that leap of faith as well.
Yeah.
I think in our culture, spirituality is really key.
Yeah.
Because there's many things that are unobtainable to us when you come from the Black community, especially if you're second generation as well. You've watched your parents go through hardship.
Yeah.
Your aim is just to be bigger and better, to give them almost the life that they deserve from coming into this country.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just gets this point. It's like, I'm either going to do this or I'm going to go home.
Yeah.
So it is that moment of drop the mic and I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
But it sounds like your passion is what fueled you out of working and saying, right, I'm going to do this full time. Is that correct?
100%. I often used to think if my life was to continue this way, as in I was just working this 9 to 5 and making enough money to save and then invest, would I die and feel like I've lived a fulfilled life?
Yeah.
And I couldn't say that I would have. And so it got to the point where I'm like, I could continue life in this way and I know how it will end, or I can take the risk in the hope that there could be more. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely love that.
Yeah.
So you're at Black, just so you know, my questions have gone out the window right now. That's how I'm going to do the conversation.
Yeah.
So we started off corporate, we're now kind of bootstrapping and working. Now we're saying, you know what, got to take that leap of faith. You know, at first you didn't quite get the project, but then you really understood what it did for the community. Yeah. So what came next when you started working there full time in that capacity?
I guess you just throw yourself at it. So like 100%. And I think one thing that made it easier for me was the fact that I had no plan Bs. It was like,
interesting,
I'm doing this now. Carl, one of the founders at Black Seed, he's quite dramatic, but he actually means it. He says it's either this or death. And I kind of, obviously in a different way, had that same mindset where I'm like, if you're working for a corporate and you come in and it's got all its foundational, processes and systems in place, if it doesn't work, you're thinking, this doesn't work for me. But when you're working for a startup, if it doesn't work, it's like, it's because I've not worked it.
Yeah.
So it was more so, how can we make this work? How can we make this work? What do we need to change? How should we pivot? What do we need to do? Who do we need to speak to?
Yeah.
And so you start, I don't know, it opens like a different side of your brain.
Yeah, it does. Like, I wish I was having this conversation with you like 20 years ago, if you want me to be honest with you. So I'm 46, and if I was to be honest with you, someone asked me the other day, like, what would you tell your younger self if you was to go back?
Yeah.
And I think that was definitely one of my problems for a number of years, trying to do too many things.
Yeah.
So I actually agree with that whole, if it doesn't work, it is death, because sometimes there's all these plans B, C, D, and then you spread yourself so thin thinking if just one of them work, it'll be great, but you can't give yourself that focus and dedication.
Yeah.
And many of those things are not your passion as well, so you can lose drive for them. Like, that's something that I wish someone had told me, like literally 20 years ago when I first started. Had some big dreams, but on the road of having to do other stuff, there was always that plan B, C, and D, and it was a distraction.
Yeah. And I'm so used to that, but it's important. I literally go, Black Seed features in my dreams. Like, I wake up thinking about emails that I need to respond to, but it's all consuming. And I feel like it needs to be, for something of this gravity, you can't half it. You've got to really
you can't. So how does Black Seed help small businesses, startup businesses that need to scale? Like, in what capacity? How does it actually work?
So we've strategically positioned ourselves at the pre-seed level, and how we categorise that is like the friends, family and fools remit.
I love it.
So where typically businesses that start up and like go on to scale might have like the bank of mum and dad or a rich uncle that they could turn to for like, 200k, and it's a really cool idea that I have. I mean, although the Black, we're not a monolith, but we don't have as much as that in terms of I'm just going to go and ask a friend for 200k into this idea. I mean, some of these businesses are not even generating revenue at the point that they're raising. So we felt like we could synthesize for that family remit.
Yeah, because in our community, I haven't got no uncle or no one that I can go be asking even £2,000. Never mind 200,000.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if we existed at that stage, we could write that first check, and our ticket sizes range from 200k to 400k.
Wow.
So that's the first bit of money that they typically get in, and then it will increase their chance of being able to raise follow-on funding. But one thing that our community hasn't been allowed is just the option of being able to fail. We've not had this say.
Yeah, like what is that? Because without failing,
Yeah,
you can't actually do anything. And I don't think people realise it. There's nothing wrong with failing. There's nothing negative about it. You could have all the PhDs in the world. Unless you go out there in the world and you start to fail, you're never going to learn.
Yeah.
To become an expert, they say it takes a minimum of 10 years. Even if you was a surgeon, you'd have to study, then be on an internship, probably get a few things wrong in an operation.
Yeah.
And then that's how you learn. And I think you're right. There's not much room for being, I don't know what it is of having failures. It's like failure, especially in our community. I've suffered from this. I felt like I've always been judged on how good my business is by my balance sheet.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if that makes any sense. It's like it's a bit like running. It's measured, the metrics meters. It's like as a business, you are only successful once you've made a certain amount. It's always been a big bear bug for me.
Yeah.
Because when you put your heart, your passion, your soul, and I'm like you, I dream about. I eat, live, and breathe this. This is like what I want to do.
Yeah.
So I totally identify with you on that. But then when you're being measured by the world on, well, how successful are you? How much do you turn over?
Yeah.
It can be really disheartening.
Yeah. And you know, with our like white male counterparts, it's worn like a badge of honor. It's like, oh, he's a second time founder, so he's got all these learnings and he's able to like move and change, and he knows when to let something go and to start something new. And we should have that ability to, you know.
Because how do you just get up and just know it all? And you've just done amazingly. So how at Black Seed as a business navigate through those failures? Like how does Black Seed support that and kind of make it more of a norm?
I mean, I'll give you an example. So I remember seeing something all over socials. There was a Black-owned business, and it tanked, and the uproar, both from the community, mainly from the community, I would say, was, oh, this is why they don't invest in Black-owned businesses, and it's just going to stop everybody else from being able to raise. And we just don't have that attitude here at Black Seed.
Love that.
At all. And it's really about being able to relate with the founder, wrap around the founder, especially when things go bad. Because oftentimes, like with investors, when things go bad, they take more control.
Yeah.
And when it's going good, that's when they'll clap for you or give you the praise. So it's like understanding that dynamic. It exists beyond us, but then being able to provide that insulation for founders through the ebbs and flows of their business development, and like being almost like a trusted partner that we will be here in the good times and the bad times.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So what type of businesses at the moment does Black Seed work with?
So we are industry agnostic, which basically means as long as they're tech or tech enabled, we'll have a look. Obviously, there's certain businesses that we've got to stay away from, like the gamblings and sorts.
Right, okay.
But generally, we're industry agnostic, and the reason why we kept it broad was because we were specific with the race element of things. So we wanted to maximise our ability to have like a look through to different sorts of businesses.
Right.
You've got certain biases, and speaking to some fintech and health tech propositions at the moment.
Oh, love it.
And one thing that I enjoy about that space is that we get quite a few female led businesses in those areas. So that's been fun for me.
Because we're starting to rocket in STEM.
Yeah.
I'm loving the amount of Black women that I'm seeing in STEM subjects and STEM areas. I'm a big advocate for that. So that is really good to hear. I love it.
Yeah.
And if someone wanted to be interested in just to reach out, speak to Black Seed, does that make sense? See if maybe their business is ready for that pre-seed. How would they go about that?
So our website, we've got a submissions link. So
cool. We'll put it in the bio, by the way, for everyone who's watching.
Answer a few questions, and then it will submit through to us, and our associate will pick it up. Or if you've got me on LinkedIn, just drop me a note.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely going to be looking out for businesses, without shadow of a doubt, and making sure that I recommend them.
Oh, yes, please.
And also make sure you keep us posted as well with businesses that are doing really well. It was interesting what you said about the failing business. I feel like there needs to be more articles and more content being put out of the businesses that are winning, or they're in an empty marketplace, or there's something really unique about them. I feel like the wins that we do have, we should be celebrating a lot more. And that's really the reason for this podcast, if you want me to be honest with you, is to showcase women like yourself, the work that's being done, just so other women can think, do you know what, if she can do it, so can I. Actually, I'm going to aim that high. I want to be consumed with the business and dream about it.
Honestly, even just this morning I was super inspired to see Maria, who was previously at Octopus Ventures. So she's gone on to reach first close of her own fund, and she's a solo GP. I know how difficult it was doing this, and there was 3 of us at the beginning. So for her to do that as a black woman by herself, I'm like, she's got 2 heads, and like, I'm just so impressed. And seeing things like that, it raises our levels of like optimism. And
it does. And I know for me, a big change in business came around when I started working more strategically. And I think strategy was something that I had to make a lot of mistakes, but I embrace mistakes. I love making mistakes. I'm very much like that with my children. It's like, well, if you didn't make this mistake, how would you know? There isn't this magic ball out there that's just going to give you the answer. The only way you're ever going to be able to push forward is by making those mistakes. So I love that.
Agreed.
So many members of our community, they're balancing a lot. They're at that stage where they're either bootstrapping, so maybe they're freelancing and contracting, or they're still working that corporate job and they're still trying to do what they do on the side. Like, what were some of your biggest challenges when you started your own business?
I think it was definitely the fact that we were bootstrapping. So there were months where we didn't know whether we were going to be paid or not. So it's like the work demands so much of you, and then you're on your laptop and you're getting notifications from like your lenders, like, oh, your payment's due at the end of the month.
Remember those days too.
Oh, and it's like, it's difficult to like give your all to this when your mind is also over
shifts your energy
completely. And that for me was probably like the valley. It was so difficult, but I guess having a team of people who like would support us through it, or support me through it.
Was you all in the same boat as well?
Similar boats.
Which is nice.
Similar boats. So having that definitely did help. But as somebody who worked in compliance before, so all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. I'm saving X amount each month, like I'm on top of my credit, and I'm like, this has never happened to me before, where I'm not sure whether I can afford to pay my bills. Like, what the hell? So that definitely was difficult. I literally developed, vertigo, where basically it's like...
See, I know the word. Gonna be vulnerable again.
Like, I'd literally be sat here and the room will start spinning.
Right,
And that's oftentimes stress-induced. So it literally was a dizzying experience. Quite literally. But yeah, you kind of just have to decide, like, do I succumb to how I'm feeling right now? And oftentimes those emotions are temporary. Once you get through it, it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't die. And I could have just quit that at that point, went and got a 9 to 5, or leaned into this and been like, we're going to make this work.
So. But I think you hit the nail on the head for me, by the way. I'm not going to die. I had to learn that. You know, it's just like, I'm still breathing. I'm healthy. I've got a family that loves me. You just got to start thinking cut half full.
Those are my affirmations in the morning. I'm like, no, I'm still here. I'm alive. Like, I've got my mental health. There's food on the table. I've got a roof over my head. Like, I'm okay. I'll be okay.
And that's what makes you kind of push through that barrier. What did it feel like, out interest, once you passed that stage? Because funny enough, I don't quite remember it. I was thinking that just today. I think someone asked me a question like about growing and scaling. Like, do you remember that time where it's just like, because it feels good paying your bills. Isn't that weird? Like, you make money, you can give that none left. The fact that I could pay my bills, that felt really good.
Do you know what? It made me more resilient. It made me more resilient. The first time it happened, I was like, literally thought it was the end. But then after a while, it's like, okay, no, I can do this. So like, bring on the rest, if that makes sense. This isn't going to be the end of me, so this has to work. If I've been able to take that knock, it has to pay off.
And it looks like it has. So mindset's one of those things that you really want to control, but your emotions can just take over you sometimes, and it can be really hard to control. I know that for me, definitely. How was it like? We've spoken about what it was like to go through that transition and change, not knowing like where paycheck, knowing that I'm going to make this work. But just in terms of mindset, like, were there anything that you could tell our community that you would do to keep you on that vibration of, okay, I've got up, I'm here, I've got a family, I've got food on the table? Like, was there anything that you would have to do? Because mindset, I still feel like even at 46, I'm still growing now every day. It's like I feel like personal growth just doesn't stop.
Yeah. Do you know what? I define it more as faith. And that was a big thing for me. It's this ability to see what has yet to manifest, but with so much conviction. So remember in our early pitches, we would go in and it's like, we're going to do X, Y, Z, or we have X, Y, Z. And none of what we've described actually exists beyond a pitch deck. And you get so used to rehearsing these facts until you start to believe it. So if someone says something that counters it, it's like, no, but we've... And there's literally no money in the bank. Like a lot of, so with fundraising, for instance, you go out and you get a ton of soft commitments, but until you reach first close and draw down on that money and get all the legal and regulatory bits in place, you don't actually have that money in the bank. You can't touch it. You can't. So it's just like something that exists over there, and you're
like the cloud.
Yeah, and that person could turn around and be like, "Oh, actually, something's changed. My circumstances are the same. I can't invest." But you've got to go into the next meeting with the conviction that you've had that money and it's locked in and it's in your bank account. But faith, it's almost like a delusional amount of faith.
Did you grow up in a religious background at all?
Yeah, I did. So I've brought up Christian, and that's definitely been a huge guiding principle throughout, like the setup of Black Seed. I
also feel like within our community, there's so many people that have been through adversity, and I also feel like as a group of people, like, how many more things could happen to us as a group of race? Does that make any sense? So I sometimes also feel what helps me get through is like, you know what, if my ancestors can do it, I can do it. 'Cause it's funny, growing up, the book that struck a chord with me, that let me know you're going to be successful and you're going to do what you want, it was Harriet Tubman.
My favourite.
I remember reading that book and thinking, if this woman can be beaten, raped, and still build a railway line and rescue how many thousands of slaves and be who she is, it kind of made me feel like, you know what, I can do whatever I want. Because I had a big mystery around who I was around about 14. No one really teaches you, where is it that Black people come from? And even when you ask your mum and dad, I think being second generation, when you want to get really deep into those issues, sometimes forget about those things. Don't be like, just leave the past as in the past. And now that I'm older, I often ask my aunt and I was like, why when we're growing up, like, you never really spoke about racism or things that you've been through? Because I find that is what propels me in terms of mindset to think, but I've got it easier.
I literally used to watch Harriet, the movie, once a month when we first started Black Seed.
Really?
Yeah, like I really resonate with her story so much. I mean, not that I can relate, but
we're gonna have to have a movie night.
Yeah. But I was literally just thinking that she done that under those circumstances, and like, who am I to not try? Yeah.
So I get that, but faith is important, because I did lose connection to my faith at one point. I don't know if you've got any advice to the listeners. Faith is it's in you, it's in your heart. I believe that God lives with you, but sometimes when you're going through like adversity and it's one thing after another, your faith can be sometimes tested.
It can take a knock. I definitely had that experience too. But funnily enough, I met Carl in church initially. So it got to a point when we've been through the ups and downs of Black Seed, and there was one point where we're like, oh no, we need to go back to praying. Because we'd started
That's so nice, by the way.
Yeah, we need to get back to praying. And so now, like, literally 8:30 every morning, we'll pray before we start the day. And it kind of just grounds us, and it allows you to see that you're doing this for a reason bigger than you. Like, it doesn't start and end with us. it's a mission that is far greater than us.
Bigger than us,
Yeah.
You just made me feel all warm and fuzzy, by the way. I think sometimes we do find it really difficult to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because in our household, when we're going through something and we really want it, like Nathan and I will come and be like, we'll even say, God, we're coming to you together as man and wife.
Yeah.
We're praying for this.
Yeah.
But then we never speak about things like, even now I'm having this conversation with you, I don't have this conversation with other people. And I'm now sitting there thinking, well, why is that?
Yeah.
But I love the fact that you brought that up. There is power in prayer.
Yeah.
Definitely in my household, we pray together, but it's just making sure you keep that spirituality up because it can get tested.
Oftentimes, I don't know, I liken it to the story of like Moses, you know. Yeah. And obviously he had this big promise for the Israelites to enter into the promised land. But one thing I realised is that he actually didn't make it there himself.
No, he didn't, did he? His son, Aaron. Yeah.
So one thing I've always been conscious about is that this mission, I liken it to the Black Seed. It exists and it will happen. Whether we enter into the promised land is up to us. So, I mean, God can pick anyone else to do this. It doesn't have to be us. So if we decide to jump off, I mean, we can, but God will see it through with us or without us. And I'm like, I'd rather be with me.
Well, believe it or not, even when I came across you and I was like, even just the name Black Seed Ventures, and I saw it on LinkedIn, I was like, I've got to get this woman onto this podcast, because you are right. This is something where you are leading people into a better way, better life. This is a world that for many of us who come from working class families, it might as well be an absolute different language. VCs, getting angel investors, being able to sit in rooms in a boardroom where what we're talking about now in white society, I'm just going to say that it is, sorry, not for it just is what it is, not for any other reason. This is normal.
Yeah.
You know, you've got children growing up just saying, when I leave uni, my dad will get bored together. There'll be some VCs and angel investors. So our community, for many of us, this is just like, oh my God, I used to look for Colby's and Dynasty when I was growing up. This is literally like a TV show. So actually you are, in my opinion, you are definitely leading the way. And you're just making the whole VC and how you can raise money and how you can get funding to bring your idea to life, how you can create legacy businesses. It's organisation like yours that are saying, hey, we're for the Black community. I've never seen it before. So I'm super proud. And I'm absolutely honoured to have you here today. I feel like our community needs to know more about VCs, how to start a business, how to really scale to that greater level and be able to have someone that walks you through it and walks you through it with faith.
Also, how many times have you thought of a business idea and slept on it and then woken up and somebody else is doing the exact same thing? So it's literally not just with Black Seed, it's with just startups in general. It's like you either do it or somebody else will.
It's funny that you say that because I run a lot of workshop and masterclasses and I always see people like, I can look, someone might steal my idea. And I always say, you know what? It's actually having the courage to make sure the idea comes to life. Because you're always saying things and think, oh, look, someone did it. There's not that many people that actually get up and do it, though.
And it's in the doing. So one thing that I've learned from Carl is we could literally be ideating on something. Before we even put pen to paper, he's calling up a mate. So I've got this idea and and then they kind of like catalyse it. So they set the wheels in motion because he's set it out there. He's putting it into existence just by calling somebody. Whereas I don't know if it's a woman thing or if it's an introverted thing where it's like, I've got to perfect this thing before I can speak to anybody about it. And it's like that doesn't help.
I'm definitely guilty of that. I'm not, until like I've got the whole proposal written out
about it, or evil eye, or all this. And it's like, sometimes you actually just got to speak and then other people will help to like set the wheels in motion. And they'll be like, oh, I remember hearing she was doing X. I saw this proposition or this opportunity. It would be good for you. So speaking about what you're doing is important. I get that. That's my takeaway, by the way.
Because I'm that person where I just think it's got to be perfect before I go out to market or present it to someone if I'm doing like sponsorship or joint ventures. And you're right, sometimes you just got to put it out there to existence. So no, thank you for that. So next we're going to talk about upskilling. Upskilling's a big part of the Women in Digital Business community because for many of us, we've got great products, we've got great services, and the whole technology and especially how fast it's changed with the introduction of AI or the software and apps. In one sense, the barrier to entry into marketplaces and starting your own business is actually lower. I started out in 2003 when there was no Wix, no Canvas. There was no software for you to be able to do anything yourself. Now there's so many things that you can do. But it can be quite frightening for many women and business owners to say, okay, how am I going to get my head around the technology part? I'm not in tune with technology. Like for you, Yvonne, what did that look like in your journey, and even the businesses that are part of Black Seed? Like, how is that, especially being digital businesses?
Yeah.
What does that look like in terms of the digital upskilling, the technology?
I think one thing, obviously, that we all know is that startups have lean budgets.
Yeah.
So we can't have as much headcount on board. So how we've leveraged technology is mainly to like automize. Yeah. I mean, especially if you want to be competitive in a competitive market, you need to be as quick and as agile as your competitors, essentially.
Yeah.
So any way that you can maximize the outputs of your team by a digital platform or an app, like it's essential. It's a no-brainer. It's something that you can't afford to not harness.
Yeah.
Because everybody's using it. So where like you might have had a few people who were a bit like suspicious of the ChatGPT or whatever, but
I love ChatGPT. That's like a whole new about 5 employees in one.
As in, like, literally, it's like, how can I leverage these things for our benefit? And it kind of goes back to slightly different but similar to what I was saying initially about Carl and the building that he was working on in terms of Brixton. So we had this developer, he was a wealthy man and he was willing to, I guess, invest in this business. And it was like, how can we use him and his resources to help us?
Yeah.
And in opposed to like looking at technology as something that's coming to take our jobs, it's like, okay, it exists now and it will never not exist. So how can I leverage technology to help me do better? And it's just that relationship that we need to build.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And this is why, ladies, I keep saying strategy is so important. Yeah. Once you've got a strategy, it actually becomes easier to use tools like AI and build a foundation as well. And actually, if I was to be honest, Yvonne, the growth point of my business came with automation.
Yeah.
So actually, but I didn't know that. So you saying that makes me feel better. You know, it's just like, okay, I got that right.
Yeah. Good.
I got that right.
Yeah.
Because I didn't actually realise that until you said it. I automated everything. I went through the whole customer journey, every single touch point, and put automation in there. I was very strategic about it.
Yeah.
But you never know whether you're doing the right thing. I don't know if that makes any sense. Yeah. Sometimes you don't actually really recognise, it's because I did X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So actually listening to you here say that today kind of validates, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just making it a mindless experience for the user as well.
Yeah.
Like one thing I love is subscription, like, you know, like the Amazon subscription thing where like you can order a product and then click to
subscribe. Yeah.
And I don't have to think to then get my next, cocoa butter or whatever it might be that you've ordered, because it just keeps coming and it's just taking thought out of.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that, actually, because I think in our community, business modelling is also something that a lot of entrepreneurs need to really think about, just in case, in terms of, okay, is this a subscription business?
Yeah.
Is this a membership site business? I think in this day and age, it's all about building communities.
Yeah.
And then when people like to belong to a tribe or belong to a community, and if you can build a successful community, it means that you can sell different products and services. Yeah. So I think I've definitely come to realise that. And technology plays a big part of that. Once you just kind of get through those barriers of using the tech and automating it, I kind of feel like the world's almost your oyster once you've proven it to yourself.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So do many of your clients have communities as well, if that makes any sense, would you say?
Do you mean the founders or the
investors? Yeah. I've been asking this question to everyone lately, by the way, because one thing that I've been noticing with a lot of business, even the bigger brands, everyone just seems really community focused at the moment. Like, I'm going to build my own tribe.
Yeah. Do you know what? The proposition that we're in conversations with now, they're working on that and they're building a community, and it's a differentiator, a huge differentiator. One thing that we led with was the community too. So we often describe ourselves as a duality. So we're a fund and a community. But before we could register and legalize the setup of the fund, we just got stuck in with the community activations and monthly events and fireside chats and workshops.
See, I love that. And I think sometimes we've forgotten how to build communities, especially with technology. Yeah. We don't have the luxury of sitting in front of one another anymore, building those human-to-human relationships. Yeah. A lot of it is done through tech. So I think the challenge as an entrepreneur now is, how do I build those meaningful relationships, but actually do it through technology, do it through the laptop, the tablet, or a smartphone. And I think think actually, even just your name, if you want to be honest with you, I thought community.
Oh, cool. I love that.
I did instantly, and I told because there's such lack of representation.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
It's almost like this can't just be a business; it must be a community.
Yeah.
And because so many of us don't really understand what a VC is or how to access them, I just feel like what Black Seed's done is given that educational point of actually saying there's a different way, there's a way that we was never allowed in before to do this, and actually we can let you in this way, but we can actually also educate you around it. And I'm always saying to people as well, even if you haven't got the funds or you're not ready to launch, you can still create a community and target the people that would want to buy from you and start building relationships with them.
It's so important. And even how we placed ourselves in Brixton. So both myself and Carla are born and raised in Brixton, and we were very intentional about being based out of there in opposed to like a Mayfair, for instance, because it just speaks to accessibility. It's somewhere where, I mean, it's got deep Afro-Caribbean ley line.
Well, even me, when I heard you from South East London, I was like, my South London roots came out.
It's important. It's important. So that was a big thing for us. Yeah,
brilliant. So being a Black woman in business, I never know how to quite articulate this, so I don't want anybody coming for me, because this isn't. I'm just being honest and I'm being vulnerable. But for me, I definitely feel like there is a difference being a Black woman in business. So there's already a difference being a woman in business. We've got all the gender pay gaps, you know, being treated fairly. But I also feel when you're Black and you're a woman in business, it does come with its fair amount of challenges. There's challenges that you've got with self-talk going on in front of your head and your own worth and your own value. And then it's also the way that you can be perceived, especially if you are in that corporate or boardroom environment. You might be looking for sponsorship. There's just so many different challenges. Just being recognised, just getting, how can I put it? I want to use the word props, but it probably isn't the right word. I just find as well that we're not that well recognised, if you want me to be honest with you. But how's it been for you in terms of those challenges as a Black woman starting her own business?
It's been interesting, and I think that as a Black woman, our disadvantages are compounded.
I don't like these words, and I can't find other words to use.
It's definitely compounded, but again, we spoke about seeing the glass half full. One thing that's helped me is look into my strengths as opposed to my weaknesses. So one exercise that I actually carried out during lockdown, I mean, there was so much going on, and I did an exercise of listing all of my privileges.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I've never done that before.
Because I feel like it's easy to expect certain things from a demographic that isn't our own.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay, what does it feel like to be the privileged one? Yeah. And what would I demand of myself if I was in that seat? And I'm like, no, but I am in that seat.
Interesting. It's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm heterosexual. I know how much of a more harder experience it is for members of the LGBTQ community, especially if you're Black.
Yes.
I don't have that. I'm able-bodied, so imagine being Black and disabled. I don't have that on me, and that's a privilege in itself.
I love what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. The fact that I was born in the UK, I mean, there's people who are from who are originally from Uganda. I mean, they don't have access to the same opportunities. Even people from up north.
Yeah, well, looking at the Windrush scandal, you've got people that live here for decades and all of a sudden they're being sent back to a country that they don't even know.
Yeah, our access is second to none in the UK, and I'm like, that's a huge privilege. And looking at things from that lens made me feel less sorry for myself. And so I'm like, oh no, I've got a lot of advantage. And
I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that I'm learning off you today, and I definitely want to look at it like that and actually have my children look at it like that as well.
Yeah.
Like, in fact, I've set you all a challenge to go away and write down what are all the things that you're privileged about, because sometimes I feel like you're right. In our communities, there's so many things and challenges that we've got, and especially with the history that we've got, that kind of sometimes can loom over you. It's almost like we've reached a day and age where it's just like, well, forget about that. That's in the past. But historically, I find it difficult to wrap my head around the fact that how can any group of people be treated like that?
Yeah.
And even after hundred of years, things still happen in the system that it feels like you're being held back. But you're right, if I keep focusing on that, I'm just making the journey harder for myself, actually, rather than sitting back and thinking, look at what all the ancestors went through for me to be where I am. And it's interesting that you said that. I was in Ghana last year and I went to the point of no return.
Oh yeah, I've been there too.
Yeah, and it was I can't even describe it emotionally, what it feels like, but you're very aware, I don't know how you felt, that you're a part of the transatlantic slave trade. Like, if these people didn't pass through these gates onto those ships, actually your very existence wouldn't even be here today. And it's quite so I've never looked at it. That's privilege within itself, actually. To think that historically, look what was gone through for you to even have the opportunities that you have now. So you've definitely just helped me reframe.
That's important.
How I look at that.
Our options are different.
That was a powerful answer.
And then also, certain things, like, as somebody who has probably been counted out, you know, I often operate from that lens too. So oftentimes when we be in like board meetings and the conversations going, I'm not used to people like giving me the mic and being like, oh, what's your thoughts on this, Yvonne? It rarely happened when I worked in corporate. So I'm quite intuitive to things like that. So if I can see the conversation is like skewed in one direction and one person's got all of the, you know, the weight of the conversation on them, I will interject and like steer it in a different direction so somebody else can speak. And
I love that.
You don't realise like who's got influence versus power around the table. Somebody might be maybe a chief of staff, but they've got the ear of like the principal, and so it's like you've got to know and be strategic in terms.
I
of
love that. I remember my uncle once told me, he said to me, sometimes you just got to whisper the right words in the right person's ear. And for whatever reason, you just said that, and it just reminded me.
It's so important. So I'm always like mindful of things like that, where I'm like, oh, I don't know if they've noticed this, and I'll like steer the conversation in different directions, but that's because I'm used to being that person, so I've got a level of empathy, and I always bring that forth when I'm in like business interactions.
And it's so weird because over the years I've always heard this, you know, black women don't support black women. I've never actually felt it, just you know. Some people have, and everybody's got their own story, and we've all got to be respectful of that, but I've never actually felt, if you're honest with you, I always feel like if I connect with another black female entrepreneur, I feel like a powerhouse in the group. I don't know if that makes sense. I feel like I get this feeling of, oh my God, if we came together or partnered, we'd just be amazing. And sometimes I just feel like, as black female entrepreneurs, I don't know, I just don't feel like the nice side of us is often shown or spoken about.
I agree. And then also just acknowledging that people are people. So it isn't specifically a black woman thing.
Because you're right, they say women and women, there's like, oh, women don't support women. And I'm like, okay, well, that narrative, you're saying it so much, you're just making the younger generation believe that that's a truth that I've actually never experienced.
And I feel like it's so important to actually take score of those things, because it's easy to just go with what's being said as the common thing. We've had the most amount of help from white men. I've had tons of help from white women. Like, I've had support from black women, and it's like, it's so easy to racialize experiences just because that's the narrative. But when you actually look at it, it's like, oh no, but who's been in our corner? And you could probably list a range of people.
Definitely. There's no one particular group that's definitely helped me on my journey. And all said and done, when you connect with people, you connect. It won't be about race or something else. There's just probably an understanding of all of us individually that maybe culturally one person could relate to more because you're from that same culture. But you're right, it doesn't stop. When I think about it now that you said it to me, I've had numerous people help me, white men, white women, black women, but that's what I mean. I've never really connected with this narrative of women don't support women or black women don't support other black women. I've never actually felt it.
I love that.
And even now that I'm speaking to you, I'm now sitting there thinking, well, where did the narrative come from? Because you're right. I can honestly, genuinely say that I've never experienced it.
And I remember in studying sociology and hearing this thing about black on black violence or black on black crime, and it was like, it was a fallacy. That happens with every community. If you live in an area where there is a large black population, likely chances are if you experience a robbery, it will be from a black person. Same way if you lived in a white community or a Jewish community or an Asian community. Crime happens within your locality by and large. And if you are socialising with black people, then you might have had more falling outs with black people or more relationships with black people.
Because you're actually the goldfish bowl.
But then if you have a wider spectrum of like social interactions, you'll experience it from every demographic.
I would totally and utterly agree with that. You're right. There's a lot of stereotypes that I think maybe get placed on us as entrepreneurs. And it's almost like you're carrying the burden. And sometimes we just need to let it go. I like that. You've definitely given me room for thoughts. It's a topic that comes up a lot in our community. And obviously our community is for black female entrepreneurs. But I like that was a powerful answer that you gave. Just in, it really is just accepting people for people. If someone's not for you and you're camp for whatever reason, actually leave that vibration energy over there. You don't have to buy into the norms that have been placed upon us of not supporting each other. Because I've seen some brilliant partnership. I feel black love everywhere, lady, as I'm getting older, if you want me to be honest with you. Women and women, men and women. I do, I feel it. And I think for me, this podcast is so important because I want to let the world see and know our community isn't just about black on black crime or unemployment or violence or drugs or there's so much negativity that I feel like the media does cover a lot. And in general, I mean, the news never reports anything nice. Like there's not even a 10-minute sector every day to say these are the wins in the world.
It's all a narrative.
So it's careful not to fall into that. Love it. So Yvonne, I actually got to meet through an organisation called Every Woman. Every Woman is absolutely fantastic. There are a bunch of ladies that really do flagship, making sure that women are recognised, all different types of women across different industries. They have a number of awards. But what's interesting is that actually when it comes to women of colour, we don't tend to enter into awards or put ourselves forward. Like, why do you feel the reason for that is, and what could we be doing more, do you think, to encourage women to apply for awards?
I think one thing that I only realised last year is that a lot of these awards can be self-nominated, and we don't tend to do that.
That is true, because that is something, to be honest with you, I know it now, but that's not something I've always known.
It feels a bit like braggy or a bit pompous, but you know, you see a lot of people 2-time award winning, this, that, and that on their LinkedIn profiles, but they've put themselves forward for those awards. So I felt generally as women, putting ourselves forward for those opportunities, that's one thing. I think another thing is probably accessibility. That's just a huge thing. I think if you don't see people that look like you count yourself out, and I've learned how wrong I am for doing that. I think it's so easy to assume a no before you've attempted, and I've literally
made up for it with Black Seed.
I mean, I've made it a rule now to stop. There's often times when I will feel sheepish to even ask a question because I'm like, oh, that's a bit ridiculous. They'll definitely. But I'm like, until I've actually asked, I can't count and shouldn't count myself out. So not assuming a no before you've actually...
That is true, actually. Many of us know things, but we don't carry out. So when I think about it, I know that no question is a silly question. I even say it when I run my masterclass, but you're right. In another environment, I think, I won't say nothing.
So Carl, who I work with, he's neurodivergent. So he's got an interesting way of looking at things. So there might be times when I might be like, oh, I didn't send the email because... And he'd question it in a way that would make me feel silly. And I'm like, oh yeah, but why didn't I? And I assumed, oh, maybe it's too soon to follow up on that email. Or he would call someone 3 times before he's satiated the fact that, oh, they're busy. And I will wait maybe a week. And he's like, to stop assuming that people don't want to speak to you. They might just be engaged, but you've got to put yourself at the top of the pile.
Okay, so I'm like you. So, you know, I would prioritise when to contact someone back, thinking that there's this, I don't know, period of time that you're meant to wait.
Like an etiquette. And do you know what? I mean, it might be how we would prefer to be engaged with, but when it's said and done, he gets the job done.
And everyone's different.
Yeah, so when he's finished, ticked all the stuff off, I'm like, oh, I was waiting a week because I thought it was too soon to follow up. So, I mean, just not assuming that it's a no before you've put your application in. And self-advocacy, that's huge.
I think as women, we need to get used to self-advocacy, can't say the word, a lot more. Because I'm like that. It doesn't feel natural to pick myself up. It feels a bit cringe. And I've had to get over that, to be honest with you. And the way that I've done it is actually using vulnerability. So I'm okay with laughing at myself. I'm okay with asking a silly question or pronouncing a word wrong, which I'm notorious for. And there's always the people that are like, oh, you don't say it like that. Or the grammar police or the spelling police. I'm dyslexic. So I just roll my eyeballs to the back of my head, by the way. I really do. There's literally a police out there. And it's just does it really matter?
I think it's this thought that it's undeserved if you've put yourself forward for it. But everything is about storytelling and narrative. If having X award is going to help to unlock Y, get X award. And you know, you can obviously quantify it with the stuff that you've done.
And even though your industry as well with VCs, that must account as well when someone on their personal CV that's the founder has got awards.
There's tons of we often call it artificial authenticators.
Ooh.
And there's a ton of that. So you might see that somebody went to school X and they might have even just done a a quick crash course there, or they were in relation with Y, or they know this person, or have been on this accelerator program, and it's all artificial things that give us an idea that somebody's capable, but in essence, it doesn't it doesn't mean that somebody who doesn't have those things could be just as good.
It's a bit like impressions, isn't it? I always say to people, when I'm consulting, the whole boardroom's like, what were the impressions? Where that's just eyeballs viewing an ad. It's a vanity figure.
Vanity metrics.
Yeah.
It's literally that. So it's like, if you know that that's what people respect, then just get it. Yeah,
and it must feel good as well. Being called on the stage, getting an award. Like, it must feel good. But I'm definitely here to plug that more of us need to start celebrating ourselves, and also nominating other women to be awarded as well. I think allyship's really important as well when it comes to this. So I urge everyone today, your challenge is to nominate someone to one of the Every Women Awards. Because that sometimes it is nice when you are nominated, but at the same time as well, there is nothing wrong with self-nomination whatsoever. It's there for the taking. Many do it, so why should you be the ones that don't? Okay, so final thoughts of the day. I just want to ask you, what piece of advice have you been given by somebody else that's really resonated with you within your journey as an entrepreneur?
Okay. So literally, as I left the office today, Carl, the founder of Black Seed, he yelled out the window, "Old rich white men." And that's just been like a bit of an internal thing for us in the team. It's like, we need to operate, move, and behave like old rich white men. It's this idea of just being entitled. So the way that he will call somebody 3 times and be like, to me, that's calling like,
why you? Do you know who I am? I love that.
It means that, like, you're not hesitating or withdrawing from actually taking action and doing things. We're going into people's offices and opening the windows because we're hot, and that's how old rich white men operate. And we need to move with a lot more audacity in order to see our visions come to life. So 100% operate like an old rich white man.
My husband's going to love this. I'm taking this one. Operate like an old rich white man, ladies. I absolutely love that. Yvonne, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here today, and I hope that we can have you on maybe a year or 2 from now and see what bigger, better things that you've gone on to. But one black entrepreneur to another, I just want to say I'm mega proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
I think the work that Black Seed Ventures done is absolutely amazing, and I'm a big advocate.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, me too.